First of all, so last night was probably one of the most gut-wrenching losses I've ever been a part of. The Raptors, man, we had them. We're up by 9 or 8, and we're like 40 seconds left to go, double overtime. Can't believe we're going to beat Oklahoma twice. But that's not quite the way it worked out at the end. And then I got up this morning, and it was beautiful, and the snow didn't develop like they always say it's going to develop, and the sun's shining, and it's opening day for TFC, and we get to finally start the season and reward you for your many years of patience and support with a team that, I don't know about you, but I can't wait to watch them, I can't wait to be a part of this, and I can't wait to cheer them on. So it's a new day, it's bright, it's sunny, and unlike last year where it seems like it rained every game, I kept on telling our guys it's going to be awesome today, and we actually walked here from ACC. So congrats to you. Have a great day today.
Yeah!
So the other great surprise I had today is that the mayor's going to vote against our plan, which probably means we win 42-2.
You didn't say NFL, that's why.
This is the guy that I went in and met with. He was mad at us that we didn't go through him at first. He wanted this to be his plan. We took him through it, and he said, you know, I'm for this, I want this, I'll support you. I'm extremely happy he's not supporting this. So, let me explain the political deal, and then Bob's going to take you through the actual facility and what we're going to try to build here. So this was a simple concept that we developed with the city manager last year. Our building, and I'm not picking on it because it's our home and will be for the rest of this year before we begin construction, hopefully. But our building is a bit of a different cat for a couple of reasons. When we built it originally, I don't think anyone perceived that the league would grow as quickly as it did. I don't think anyone perceived that the league's economics would change as dramatically as it has. And I'm also a little worried that we probably didn't think through enough the fact that building an open-air stadium without a roof in a place where it rained 17 to 19 days last year on us, next to a lake, and I'm told it gets cold here during the winter. I'm told this was a great winter compared to most. So, actually, I'm convinced you all got together in a cult, and everybody comes up to me saying, that's the worst winter I've ever seen. And I don't believe that's true. I think this is your normal winter, and you're just trying to make me feel better. And so our stadium aged quicker than most. And by the way, our stadium is already outdated and the third oldest stadium in Major League Soccer because of how quickly the league has changed. So I knew that we had to get on this and get on it soon. And the conversation we had with the city, and this is, leaving the kidding aside with the mayor, this is where leadership comes into play here. We're 50-50 partners with the city on the capital improvements of the stadium. So we went through this winter and assessed the capital improvements. And guess what? There's a bill coming for $30 million to put a Band-Aid on the stadium. No roof, no changes in anything. Just simply to repair the concrete, repair the steps, treat the water damage, redo all the suites, and fix the concourses. No major improvements whatsoever. We're probably looking at $30 million. Guess what? That's $15 million from the city and $15 million from us. Now, we'll pay the $15 million because it's a lot cheaper than $90 million. But it doesn't solve anything. And without a roof, 5 years from now, we'll be putting another $30 million into the stadium because you cannot have a stadium in Toronto that sits there exposed during the wintertime. Because when water and snow freeze and get into the concrete, it expands. And then when a day like this comes along and the ice melts, the concrete shrinks. Well, guess what happens? It cracks. And so as long as we have an open-air stadium where we let the water elements wear and tear, every 5 to 7 years, we're going to be putting $30 million into the stadium just to keep it together as it is today. So this requires some vision. And I understood that the city and the province and the feds have a lot of other priorities, and I agree they should be spending their money elsewhere. But this is their stadium. It is a city-owned venue. It is on federal land, and the initial funding for this, about 80% of the initial funding came from the city, the province, and the feds. So we went back to the city and said, let's turn it completely around. and put the priority on the private sector. We think it's going to cost $120 million for the roof and the improvements. Actually, at the time, it was not $120 million. It was between 90 and 100. And then they came along and said, we want this to be a solution for the CFL. And we'll get into that in a second. So what happened is this ballooned to $120 million, and we came back to them and said, here's what we'll do. One, we'll put up $90 million in cash ourselves. Two, we'll take full responsibility for building it, including any cost overruns. Three, we'll take full responsibility for operating it and taking the city off the hook from now on out. And four, probably most importantly, we will now take full responsibility for all capital improvements going forward, and we'll put all the money in ourselves. So we completely privatize the risk, but at the same time, we protect the stadium so it still remains an asset of the city, and it's at their beck and call as to how we use it. Some of the conditions they put upon us included the Pan Am Games. They want additional capacity, they want no construction during that period of time, and they want to be able to put more people in there for the Rugby 7 tournament that will be going on in the BMO during the Pan Am Games. They want to protect this facility for the Canadian Soccer Association, not just for the qualifiers, but they want us to be able to be a bid-ready stadium, meaning we got to have 40,000 capacity to be included in the bid for the 2026 World Cup. They want us to take care of the CFL and find a solution to that once and for all, because they don't want to build multiple stadiums, and they don't want to see the Argos move out to Vaughan. And so that ballooned to $120 million. We asked for $10 million from the city, $10 million from the province, $10 million from the feds. The $10 million from the city, we've agreed to repay over 20 years with interest. They actually do better with this investment than they do with their pension fund. They get a pretty good, healthy return on the $10 million. The $10 million from the province, we're estimating that the economic impact of our events and the special events that we bring into the city that we're prepared to go bid on and take risk on is going to add about $8 million a year to the province and the taxes they collect off those big events and the activity generated at BMO Field. And finally, with the feds, we're asking them to put in money. And by the way, the province money and the feds money goes to the city, not to us. And then the city ultimately makes their contribution and we repay the $10 million back. The $10 million from the feds is really geared towards giving us the infrastructure necessary to take it from 30,000 seats to 40,000 seats temporarily for the Winter Classic, Grey Cups, the bid for the World Cup for the Canadian Soccer Association, qualifying games, and anything else we can get our hands on that will move the economics and move the economy within the province, within Canada, and within Toronto. That's the deal. We're going through the process now with the city. The executive committee approved it 11-1. 11-1, was that the vote? By the way, it was 11-1, and the two amendments that they added on were approved 12-zip, 12-zip, and then 11-1 on the big vote. So you figure that one out. I'm still trying to figure that out. That didn't make much sense to me. Guess who the one vote was that said no, but voted twice yes for the amendments?
Ford.
Was it before?
The province ultimately is still a work in progress, but we understand that this deal doesn't get done with the city unless the province and the feds agree. But we expect that we're going to be done with the province here in the near future. They're asking guarantees out of us, blackout days for the Pan Am Games, no construction materials on site. The additional capacity for the Pan Am Games has to be included. They're now asking for an additional commitment out of us in the city towards Ontario Place, which we're prepared to make in order to beautify that. So we're not done with the province, but we're close. To the credit of the province, they understand the economic engine that's created with this private investment. And finally, with the feds, we are now going through the process of talking to them. They clearly understand the private-public partnership and the fact if you look at the $120 million and we're putting in about $100 million of it, they love those economics. They want that kind of economic generator from the private sector, and they love the fact that we're prepared to go take care of the stadium, operate the stadium, and put capital into the stadium and take all the risk going forward for 20 years. So that's the political deal. We expect to be before the full council in early April. We expect we're going to get probably 42-2 or 40-4. You figure out the two voting against us. I assure you, the thing that riles me the most is when someone accuses us of a gravy train. It's exactly the opposite. We're taking a public facility that the city currently has a 50% responsibility to pay for, and we're looking at bills over the next 10 to 15 years that will be $30 to $40 million out of the city's pocket, and we're proposing a solution that has them put in $10 million and we repay them over 20 years. This is not a gravy train. This is simple, smart math and great leadership on behalf of the city manager to find a solution where the private sector steps up and takes all the risk. I'm not embarrassed by this deal. I will not let it get in the middle of a political race. And at the end of the day, this stadium, this city, this team, and you fans deserve a facility that's the best in Major League Soccer. And that's what we're going to try to do. Last point, and it's been the most controversial point. I know much has been made about the Argos. I've heard an awful lot from all of you. I've heard an awful lot from the Argo fans. I've heard an awful lot from the city and the councilors and the city manager, and everybody has an opinion. So here's the reality. In a perfect world, would we love to build a soccer-only stadium and keep everybody out? Yes, that would be fantastic. In case you haven't figured out, I'm a soccer junkie. I love soccer. I'm passionate about our league. I am very, very determined to make this one of the best leagues in the world. And we will do anything we can to win the MLS championship here. So we are dedicated to TFC, and we just proved it. So please don't doubt at the end of the day that we're not committed to soccer and we're not going to protect the team, your experience in that stadium. But I also understand it's not our stadium, and I also understand compromises have to be made. So what we propose to the city, and they've agreed, is first and foremost, we're going to manage it, we're going to operate it, we're going to run it. So simple things. I've read a bunch of debates about how bad the Argos logo is going to look in the middle of the soccer field. Not going to happen. There will be no logos on the soccer field. Except a little ribbon when we win the championship, and we'll put it on there for the opening of the next year.
Red ribbon.
We will put logos in the end zones for the Argos. The end zones will be artificial turf. The stands, east-west or north-south? North-south. Stands will ultimately go over those, and during a soccer game, it'll be exactly the same setup you see today, except these stands on each end for a CFL game will roll back, and then you'll see the artificial turf, and you'll see the logos. That's the only time you're going to see them. We will not play a Argos game on a Friday night and a TFC game on a Saturday, because you can't get rid of the lines, and you can't repair the turf. We know that. Can we play a TFC game on a Saturday and an Argo game on a Sunday? Yes, because we can put the lines on Sunday morning, and it's an easier situation for us to handle. We will never, ever, though, do a soccer game the day after an Argos game. We can't do it because we can't get rid of the lines quick enough. We're going to keep the real grass. We're going to put in a hybrid system. The hybrid system, as Bob will explain, is for the purpose of the roots, not the surface. You'll see maybe 10% of the surface be artificial, but it's really for the purpose of taking the roots of the grass and getting them to grow around that hybrid system so that that turf is much tougher and is resilient. What you see here is what we want to give you. Are there going to be challenges? Yes, there's going to be scheduling challenges, especially during the playoffs. That's where we're going to have to be clever in November, because hopefully we're going to be playing home games in November if we're good. And so we'll take those issues, we'll take those problems. Bear with us. We're going to spend $20 to $30 million to try to make this work so that we guarantee you a better experience, the same setup you see here, more capacity, a roof, improved concourse services, and a better stadium that allows us to compete and spend at the very levels we're spending today for the next 20 years. So with that, I'm going to let Mr. Hunter take you through our vision for how we pull that off. Bob?
Thanks, Tim.